I'm Rebecca, and I'm a licensing specialist here at the LCB, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Sarah and Courtney, who are here to help with the questions. Please make sure to mute your phone or computer upon entry. You may send in your questions during the presentation at any time using the chat feature on the right corner of the screen. Be sure to choose the option to send to everyone. We will answer as many questions as we have time for at the end. Any questions that have not been answered by the end of the presentation will be answered at a later date and posted on the website with this recorded session. Please check the licensing classes under archive in about 2 weeks. The webinar is being recorded. The purpose of this seminar is to help licensees understand the application process for cannabis businesses to assume a licensed business and or change a governing person or percentage in ownership. These are the types of cannabis change applications the Liquor and Cannabis Board processes. Application for adding a financier, adding additional funds to an existing business, request to alter a marijuana site and or operating plan, request to add a processor license, splitting a producer processor license, change of location. But today, specifically, we'll be touching on a change in governing people and percentage ownership and assumption applications. This slide reflects the differences in the applications. With the change in governing people application, your UBI will stay the same, where in an assumption application, the entire UBI will change. With the change in governing people application, the fee is $75. However, an assumption application is $250 and requires licensing fees to be paid prior to approval. A change in governing people application will have the new members inherit all assets and liabilities of these businesses. So what we mean by that is administrative violations. So you're going to assume that business's administrative violations, and if you want to check on that prior to doing the change in governing people, you would do that by going onto our website and looking under the frequently requested list. Assumptions, you do not assume or inherit the liabilities or assets or infractions. For both applications, if you're being removed or someone is assuming your business, you no longer have the rights to the license and or the business. How can I apply for a change to my licensed cannabis business? So this is how you get to the applications from our website. You go directly to the Liquor and Cannabis Board, lcb.wa.gov. That brings you to our website with a drop down to marijuana licensing, and this is a list of our applications. As stated previously, the two that we're discussing today are a change in governing percentage ownership and or stock unit ownership and an assumption. This application is used when you want to add or remove members or shareholders from your business structure. This includes spouses, selling of shares, removing members, adding new members, changing percentages, gifting ownership, or death of a member. It can also be used to add a true party of interest who may not be on the business structure but will be taking a % of profit or making business decisions such as a commissioned employee. So here's the application. That's how you get to it, a change in governing people and percentage. This application must be mailed with the application fee and any other fees that are associated through the BLS. This application is owned by the BLS, not the Liquor and Cannabis Board. Therefore, If it needs to be mailed directly to the Business Licensing Services at the address listed at the top left-hand corner of with the appropriate fees. So this application has to be processed through BLS first because BLS will send the information to update other state agencies such as Secretary of State and L&I. This application must be signed by a current member of the business structure. When you apply to assume a business, the application you will use is the business licensing application through Business Licensing Services. Again, this application is owned by BLS and not the LCB. Therefore, it needs to be sent directly to BLS for processing first. The application must be mailed with the appropriate fee. There are other fees associated with BLS. When you are completing the business licensing application for an assumption, you will choose the box marked Change Ownership and complete the application sections 2, 3, 4, 5 if you have employees, and 6. This will include a section to provide the business UBI that you are assuming. A cannabis license is associated with a physical location of the business. A business cannot be assumed and have their location change at the same time. When you assume a business, you assume their current license number and their current location. Remember that this is a BLS application, therefore detailed questions about how to complete the application should be directed to BLS. What happens when I mail my application to Business Licensing Services? After Business Licensing Services receives your application, it processes it and then sends it to the Liquor and Cannabis Board. When the Liquor and Cannabis Board has received it, the application will be assigned to a licensing specialist. The licensing specialist will contact you to schedule an initial interview by phone. How can I prepare for my phone interview? The following information will be needed for all members, spouses, and true parties of interest: a full legal name, date of birth, social security number, email addresses, marital status, title and percentage of ownership, if shares or units are being purchased or gifted, if purchased, what is the purchase amount, if gifted or transferred, what is the reason for the gift or transfer, the source and amount of available funds being utilized for the change. Whoever conducts the interview will be the main point of contact throughout the application process. By being prepared for your interview, you will maintain an efficient process. When your licensing specialist requests the required documents, read over the request letter very carefully and fill out all forms in their entirety. If forms are filled out incorrectly or returned incomplete, it will delay the process time for your application. All funds being exchanged through the application process will be vetted, so be sure to have the source and amount available at the time of the interview. Complete fingerprinting as soon as possible. You cannot add or remove someone from the business structure without prior LCB approval. If the change has already taken place, this may result in a violation. I'd like to speak to this last bulleted item. The Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board will require documents that show all governing people consent to the change applied for. Sometimes in an entity, business associates and members don't see eye to eye. Just because someone leaves the business, or even if you simply don't like that person or people anymore, you can't just turn in a change in governing people application and change the structure with the LCB. You must have all governing people consent to the change. Some applicants think that if the structure is changed with the Secretary of State, that the change has occurred. That is incorrect. Documents most commonly requested after the initial interview. Additionally, when you are, entity business structure, total cost and source of funds, personal criminal history statement, financial documents, financial statement, authorization to disclose and furnish record, purchase and sale agreement, bill of sale, proof of residency, license association form. Just remember that each application is unique and investigated individually where further information may be requested. Additionally, when you are assuming a business, the Liquor and Cannabis Board may request the following: for assumptions, updated operating plans and floor plans, scale, insurance, an update to the lease or real property may be requested. We will now touch briefly on the forms and how to prevent errors in completing them. This form provides LCB with the structure of your business, including members, shareholders, and percentages they own. As you can see, this form will require the business name, phone number, mailing address, and entity type. It also includes the individuals making up their structure, full names and dates of birth, as well as spouses. If you have a spouse who is receiving a percentage, you will complete a section for yourself and then for the spouse as a percentage oath. Please look to this example. So with this example, we have John Doe and wife Sally Smith. John Doe is a member manager at 50%, and his wife Sally is also a member at 50%. So this is how it would need to be written out. John Doe, Sally Smith, John Doe, a member at 50%, Sally Smith, a member at 50%, and this must equal 100%. The signature will be provided by the main point of contact. Total cost and source of funds. This is to be filled out by the main contact for the business. It conveys the total amount of all funds being invested, who is investing, the amount, and the source. So $10,000 total is being invested. Sarah Smith, who's filling out the form, is contributing $5,000. John Doe is also contributing $5,000, but his is broken up into two separate accounts. If the money is coming from your account, you will need to include the account number. If the money is coming from someone else's account, you do not need to include the account number. Source of funds. This is to be filled out by each person individually who's making the monetary or non-monetary contribution to the business, including and following the total amount contributed, the source of where the money is coming from, the account number that the money is coming from, and if not contributing money, then list the non-monetary contribution. For John Doe, John Doe will be giving from Wells Fargo, will be his source for $3,000 with his account number, $2,000 coming from Timberland Bank. He's going to be contributing a total of $5,000, and apparently he is going to be receiving 75% of the business for this contribution. A personal criminal history statement will be requested for anyone contributing funds to the business or listed as a true party of interest, including spouses. This is where you put your personal criminal history, and we need a full 10 years of your employment history, and that includes your retirement time frame. So if you've been retired, you will have to add that in if it is within the last 10 years. We understand that this form doesn't give you a lot of space to put your criminal history in or your employment history. So they've added a continuation sheet at the bottom where you just click yes, add the respective information, and then add it to this form when you submit it. Financial statement. This is what the financial statement looks like. The LCB requires that you fill in all sections that apply to you, and if you are married, you will be filling in this form to reflect the assets and liabilities of both you and your spouse. If you answer yes to any of the questions in this section below, you will need to provide an explanation, and you can do so by attaching another sheet. Financial documents that may be requested. If using cash for your business, the licensing specialist will request tax returns. This must include all pages of each yearly return. If utilizing bank accounts, credit cards, or investment accounts, you'll be requested to provide statements that include name of financial institution, account number, all pages in each monthly statement, the name of the account holder, and an attached statement with verifying documentation explaining any large deposits. If you have added any money to these accounts, you will be asked to provide statements for the additional accounts. Loan and line of credit documents. If you're using a loan or line of credit, your licensing specialist will request supporting documentation. This must include name of lender, name of borrower, loan amount, account number, signature of loan officer, and collateral. We may also request pay stubs, trust documents, insurance policies, and proof of sale of property. All should reflect the applicant's name. Proof of purchase. When shares or units are being purchased, gifted, or transferred, you will need to provide the following. Purchase and sale agreement, that includes the buyer, the seller, terms of the agreement with the total cost, signed and dated. A bill of sale, final agreement, signed by buyer and seller that confirms terms of agreement and proof of transfer purchase. Signed and dated. Submitted after the LCB verifies all documentation submitted and approved. Gift agreement. That's if no monetary exchange has occurred, with an explanation of the gift, signed and dated. So I've included some information regarding the WAC for true parties of interest, because we discussed true parties of interest, and the WAC actually clarifies exactly what those people are. So we've added that to this presentation, as well as some information with regard to your personal criminal history and points that can accumulate. This is the WAC that speaks to the personal criminal history and the points that can accumulate and bring delays in your application process. Any legal issues that you have had in the past are best to disclose on your personal criminal history, due to the fact that even with 8 points, that can be accumulated with 2 issues that you do not disclose. Also added reasons that the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board may deny, suspend, or cancel marijuana license applications, just for your reference. And the last slide just kind of goes over the process of your application after it hits your licensing specialist. You'll have that go to, depending on what your application is, go to final inspection with the enforcement officer. That application gets basically returned back to the licensing specialist to finish up the process to go to finance for fees. After fees have been assessed, it goes to customer service for issuance, and then after that you should receive your decision letter. And that decision letter basically details that that the changes occurred and that the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board have processed everything completely. Hold for a brief moment while we prepare to answer your questions. Please submit any questions that you have at this time.
So we have a couple questions. One of the questions is, are there taxes due related to any assumption transactions? There are no taxes related to the sale of the business required by LCB for the assumption application. Another question is, assuming all items are in order, what is an expected time frame for an assumption process to be completed? Assuming that all items are in order, which sometimes that does not happen, we do have a goal to complete our applications within 90 days. Some can be a lot shorter and some can be a little bit longer, again, depending on the situation. Each application, it presents different scenarios, and so that can be the timeline. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Those were the only questions that were submitted. You're always welcome to call our customer service line at 360-664-1600 if you do have questions for applying for applications. And also, once you have an application submitted with your licensing specialist, they'll be able to answer any questions you may have. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.